The Imperial Cavalry. First on the list are the Knights. The so-called Knights of your Empire are barely worthy of the name. It takes more than a lance and steed to make a knight. Do we call the pick riders of the green skins knights when they ride to battle? No. Knighthood is more than the art of fighting from horseback. It is a way of life, a code of behavior, and a daily quest for virtue. It is chivalry, something I fear the cavalrymen of the Empire will never understand. From Sir Guy du Baston, a knight of Bretonnia. And I am eager to discuss knightly virtue further with Sir Guy, or any other Bretonian who cares to call mine into question. My lance and I will shortly put the matter to rest. From Sir Theodoric von Ritterstein, a Knight Panther. The knightly orders of the Empire are noble, heroic brotherhoods of armored warriors who ride into battle atop mighty bordered warhorses and sometimes other more exotic creatures. The noble-born warriors of the Empire do not form part of any state's standing army, for to do so would mean to rub shoulder with the common soldiery. Knights are magnificent figures, clad in gleaming suits of heavy plate armor and armed with weaponry of the finest quality. The sight of a regiment of knights charging full tilt at the enemy is a terrifying prospect for the Empire's foes to face. As the knights thunder onwards, they are likened to an avalanche of steel and muscle, and those enemies not spitted on the end of sharpened lances are crushed beneath the trampling of iron-shod hooves. To become a member of one of the Empire's select brotherhoods of knightly orders, a noble must forsake his feudal responsibilities and rights of inheritance, and then pass a rigorous rite of initiation. There are many of these brotherhoods throughout the Empire. Some are small in size, and their members are recruited from the local aristocracy, such as the Knights Griffon and the Order of the Broken Sword. Other orders restrict their membership to devout worshippers of a particular god. These are often referred to as Knights Templar, and they include such orders as the Black Guard of Mor and the Zealous Knights of Sigmar's Blood. Whilst every knightly order will have a primary temple in one city, state, or province, most will also maintain subsidiary temples across the length and breadth of the Empire. The knightly orders of the Empire are organized along strict lines of hierarchy, with every novice trained in martial virtues and the chivalry code until he is ready to take up the mantle of a fully fledged knight. As the warrior attains honor on the battlefield and proves his worth, he will ascend through the ranks of his order and forge himself a warrior's name. The order's veteran knights form its inner circle. These heroic warriors epitomize the warrior virtues of the knightly orders, and they have accomplished mighty feats of arms, slaying their foes on countless battlefields. The Knights of the Inner Circle are the elite of the elite, amongst the best fighting men of the entire Empire. Every Empire Knight bears his rank and order's symbols upon his shield or armor as heraldic devices and other icons of importance and symbolic meaning. The most famous orders in the Empire have histories stretching back centuries, and their chapter houses are hung with ancient banners and battle trophies. The largest and most influential orders are the Reiksguard Knights, the Knights of the White Wolf, the Knights Panther, and of course, the Knights of the Blazing Sun. The Empire Pistolier. Look what their damned arrows did to my doublet! Right, chaps, let's give 'em a taste of hot lead. Charge! From an anonymous Pistolier. Pistoliers are the elite light cavalry of the Imperial Army. They specialize in wielding firearms, specifically pistols. They have only come into their own recently, as gunpowder weapons have been relatively unstable until now in the old world. Because of the expense of their weapons and the constant upkeep that pistols and war horses require, noblemen dominate the ranks of the Pistoliers. Many young nobles volunteer for the Pistoliers in search of glory or in the hopes of making a name. It's like shooting goblins in a gorge. An Imperial marksman's saying. Empire Pistoliers are fielded by the armies of the Empire as a form of fast, light reconnaissance cavalry that are equipped with half-plate armor and a brace of pistols to support them in their role as dedicated scouts and skirmishers. The main duty of the Pistoliers is to harass the enemy with gunfire and retreat before they could suffer any reprisals. Most of them have a certain affinity when it comes to gunpowder weaponry, with the most talented Pistoliers usually hailing from the Imperial Gunnery School, a prestigious institution where they are taught how to handle, maintain, and equip a simple firearm in combat. The rank of a Pistolier is mostly reserved for the noble families of the Empire, where young military-minded youths go in order to prepare themselves for the rigors of cavalry warfare within the knightly orders of the Empire. As such, those young yet spirited nobles may gather their friends and form regiments of Pistoliers of their own. However, it is far more common for these rash nobles to enlist themselves within the prestigious ranks of the Pistol Corps, a military organization funded and sponsored by the Emperor, the College of Engineers, and several brotherhoods of Imperial Knights. It is from here that these young nobles learn about proper horsemanship and disciplined warfare from the ranks of the Outriders, grizzled veterans paid by the knights to train young nobles in the proper art of war. As such, many Pistoliers would often be fighting in open battlefields for the first time in their lives. Due to their luxurious upbringings and hot-headed behavior, they are often disdained by the common soldier as nothing more than flashing flops. However, none could deny that there are still true warriors within the ranks of the Pistol Corps, with tales abound of many young yet spirited Pistoliers jumping into the jaws of the enemy with nothing but courage and their prideful arrogance to keep the enemy at bay. These tales are the sole reason why many young nobles are so interested in becoming a Pistolier. Such fantasies are often indulged by the fathers of these young nobles as a way of tempering their wild bravado into something more dependable and beneficial for their family and the Empire as a whole. The Empire Outrider. He'd have to be one hell of a shot to get me from the last words of Duke Reinhard of Karlsborg. Empire Outriders are the elite, veteran warriors of an Imperial Pistol Corps squadron, acting as both a drill instructor and commander of a squadron of ill-experienced Pistoliers. Unlike the flamboyantly young nobles of a Pistolier company, Outriders are rarely of noble birth, but rather are veterans elevated from the ranks of a regular state troop regiment. Sergeants and officers who show an affinity for horsemanship and a talent for training new recruits. Outriders typically wear a heavier, more ornate suit of half-plate armor, a symbol of how a nobleman would pay large sums of money for their sons to be taught the lessons of the art of war. They also tend to sport eccentrically waxed mustaches to better differentiate themselves from their younger and more ill-experienced recruits. The Outriders that lead units of Pistoliers into battle have the job of reining in their young recruits' excesses and keeping them out of the worst dangers that come from a battlefield. Although this is sometimes a forlorn hope, an Outrider's stern gaze and bark orders have prevented more than one foolhardy Pistolier from getting himself killed recklessly by the enemy. Outriders see their younger Pistolier counterpart as promising if intemperate youngsters who simply lack the military discipline of a typical soldier. Despite much grumbling about not showing their elders any respect, Outriders are always extremely proud when one of their own recruits are inducted into the ranks of a prestigious knightly order. When amassed in large numbers, Outriders generally form into separate regiments of the same rank, sometimes to show their recruits exactly how it's done, but also as a way to display their own martial discipline to any rich nobleman within the army that might be looking for an experienced instructor to tutor his own sons. As the Pistol Corps is funded in part by the Imperial Engineers School, Outriders are generally equipped with deadly repeater handguns, weapons capable of unleashing a devastating storm of lead at long range. The leader of the Outriders, inevitably the keenest shot in the regiment, will often be armed with an even more outlandish weapon befit of his status, and sometimes even gifted to him by a patron master engineer. And of course, the most famous of them all, the Demigryph Knights. They rode their powerfully agile steeds up the side of the valley, arcing around and down upon the flanks of the green-skinned horde. There they waged a cull of such unremitting violence that it broke the deadlock and ultimately carried the day from a Knight of the Vengeful Sun during the Battle of Ghoul Pass. Demigryph Knights are amongst the most powerful heavy armored shock cavalry ever fielded within the armies of the Empire. Although the knights themselves are expert cavalrymen, the mounts that they ride are what truly distinguishes them in the heat of battle. These massive war beasts are ferocious and powerfully built, standing larger than any Imperial warhorse, and are far more bloodthirsty in their murderous assault than any other creature of such noble heritage. With a thick layer of armored plates overlapping over powerful sinews of muscular claws, and a beak so powerful that it can dismember a fully armored knight in two, these demigryphs are reserved for only the mightiest of Imperial knights. Despite their fearsome reputation, Demigryph Knights are relatively rare, as the beasts themselves are far too few in numbers to mass produce, and the breeding programs meant to supply the Empire with more have been met with grisly consequences. As such, the only way to tame such a beast is to go to the darkest reaches of the Reichwald forest. At the heart of this great forest lurk many foul and ancient beasts of many ages past, but none are so noble and majestic in their heritage as the prides of demigryphs who ruthlessly claim this patch of territory as their own. Amongst a select few of the knightly order, an aspiring knight's final quest is to capture and tame a mighty demigryph and break it to his will. Unsurprisingly, many fail upon this task and are torn to bloody ribbons as a consequence. However, those that do manage to tame a demigryph are given great praise, for not only has the knight gained a mighty and loyal companion, but he has also given his knightly order even greater prestige in having such a beast within their arsenal. Such a reward comes at a heavy price, for a knight would be scarred for all his life with the cuts and wounds inflicted by his own mount. However, these knights wear the scars like a badge of honor, for they set themselves apart from their horse-mounted brethren, bearing testament to their own personal bravery and martial ability. In turn, demigryphs are forever loyal to their masters once they have earned their trust, with tales abound of loyal demigryphs stalking their prey to avenge the death of their noble rider. When the call to war is sounded, these demigryph knights would form into their own respected squadrons of heavy shock cavalry. When driven to a charge, their demigryph would start its attack with a pounce on the enemy, which is then followed by a series of swift swipes from his muscular claws. Such an impact can cause the enemy to be crushed into the floor or be thrown many yards away. Unlike the common warhorse, a demigryph does not attempt to overwhelm its prey by means of a great charge, but rely on its own brute strength and sheer size to take his prey down. With its monstrous endurance, a demigryph would fight for hours, ferociously rendering flesh into scraps on the floor with claw and beak. With the close confines of such a battle and the sheer size of his demigryph mount, the traditional cavalry lance is often replaced with a cavalry halberd to give them the ideal reach and power to crush their enemies.